Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me. My name is Chris MacBain. I'm going to be your host today. I'm going to take this time to really show you how fast and efficient GibbsCAM is. Now, all CAM systems say that they're fast and they're easy to use, but I'm going to show you real examples today how GibbsCAM can actually speed up your programming process. So go ahead and grab your coffee. I've got mine, and let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go and show how to machine the faceplate on this watch. Let me just click on this. So I'm going to machine that part. What I want to do is I want to isolate that part from this whole assembly, and I'm going to show you how easy that is. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A. I'm going to just select everything. And I'm going to right mouse button click and say bag selected. And what this is going to do is this is going to put all of those solid bodies into what we call the body bag, which is kind of like a holding area for solids. This is where you put them. You don't want to delete them from your assembly or from your model, but you just kind of want to put them away for a little bit. So that's what I did. So you can see that they all went into the body bag, and I'm going to deal with just this one right here. What I did is I put them all in, and now I'm just going to unbag that one. There we go. So I'm going to come down to the lower right and fit this to screen, and let's check out an isometric of that. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that it's oriented the correct way and that my stock's the right size. So up here in GibbsCAM we have these buttons that are very easily accessible to change the way you see a model. For instance, if I wanted to see solids, I can turn them on and off. And then here I can do wireframe and solid. And these two are the ones I'm really going to deal with right now. This is my stock, and this is my machining plane. My machining plane looks great, but my stock looks a little big. The reason it's that big is there was a part actually that I had taken out of the assembly earlier on before I brought this part up, and it was taken into account, that part. So I want to just machine this plate. Really easy to do. I can, if I want to, just manually change the size of my stock. If you know the size of your stock, you can put in your X, Y, and Z coordinates here. Great. If you don't know, or if you just want to get some toolpath on this, I can come up to modify. I come down here to shrink wrap visible. And what that does is that actually makes the stock the extent X, Y, and Z of the part. So now that I have the part oriented the correct way and the stock the right size, let's get to the meat and potatoes and start programming this thing. So when I program a part, I look at it as, it's really in 5 steps. The first thing I do is I create a tool, and then I choose the operation that I want to use, and then I choose the geometry I want to machine, and then I set the parameters, feed, speeds, depths, things like that, and then I simulate the toolpath to make sure it's right. So let's go ahead and start with creating the tool and choosing the operation. Now I want to access the menus for my tools and my operations, and it's right up here in the middle. So I hit Tools, and this brings up my tool tile list, and my CAM brings up all of my operations, and those are my ops over on the right, and my processes over here on the left. Now the difference is a process is something that you're working on. It's in process. Then once you move it over to here to the actual operations, that's what's going to get posted. And I'll show you that. It'll make sense in a second. So first off, we know that this part's small. Let's go ahead and make a tool real quick. I think this will probably work. So we'll use 16th inch end mill. Shank looks okay. We can put a tool holder on it if we'd like. Probably not one that looks like that. Maybe one that looks like that. Hit OK. So that's the tool. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the operation. I'm going to go to my processes and just double click. And what I want to do is I want to rough out all of these pockets. I want to get that material out of there. So I'm going to click roughing. And when I do that, you can see that I now have the option to select my tool. I could do it the other way around. I can select my tool first and then apply an operation to it. GibbsCAM is really flexible that way. We do our best to try and let you decide how you want to proceed in machining parts and procedures and stuff. So, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click that tool. I've selected the tool. I've selected the operation. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose the geometry. So I'm going to turn off face selection. So I'm going to pick that whole solid that I want to machine. Great. Now I'm going to do the parameters. GibbsCAM is great. This is one of my favorite things about GibbsCAM right here is just setting where the toolpath starts and where it ends in the retract. It's all in this box right here. So here's the top of my part. So I'm going to double click that. I'm just going to hold down my Alt key and click on the top. That's 0, so it's going to start at 0. And then I want it to go all the way to the bottom of the part. So I'm going to click on the bottom, and then that's where the toolpath is going to end. I can have my feeds and speeds and lead-ins and lead-outs, retracts, hit depth, things like that. These are the parameters I'm talking about. This isn't a training class, so I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can see from just this one tab, you have a lot of control over your toolpath. You have control over the open sides, if you want to trim or offset toolpath, entry and exit, everything that you need is right inside of this window. So now that I've got this, I can either click Do It over here to the left. I can do it in the window up here, or I can just right mouse button click anywhere and hit Do It. So that's the toolpath I have, right? So we look at it, it's okay. So a couple things. One, I want to step down a couple times. You can see how it's taking it all in one pass. I also want to contain that toolpath inside of the silhouette of the part. In order to do that, I just come right over here into the parameters, and for my C step, instead of 0.8, let's say it's 0.02, and that's going to do it. You can see here, if I go down 20 thousandths, it's going to do it in 5 passes. If I hit Do It, it's going to create a whole nother set of toolpaths over on the right over here. I don't want to do that. I just want to redo what I've done. So I can click Redo there, or I can right mouse button click and hit Redo. There we go. Looks a little bit better. Okay, so now I want to contain that toolpath. Doing containment inside of GibbsCAM is really fast and easy also. There's no separate dialog box. There's no, make this the silhouette, machine inside, machine outside, things like that. All I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on edge selection. I'm just going to double click on the bottom silhouette of this part. I'm going to right mouse button click and say Extract Edges. Okay, so now when I select the part, let me turn off edge selection, and I'm going to hold down the Control key, double click and select that line, and I'm going to hit Redo. GibbsCAM automatically knows to stay inside of that line. If you create line geometry, or if you select line geometry and solid geometry, it'll know where you want to machine. You want it to stay inside of it. Let's go ahead and come back to an ISO with this. The last step is in that 5-step plan is simulating the toolpath. So seeing what it's going to look like when the material is being removed from this part. We have a few options up here. If we look at the upper center of the menu, we have OpSim, Machine Sim, Tool Sim, Rapid, and Legacy. OpSim will show these operations on the stock. Machine Sim, if you have a machine model loaded, we can look at the whole entire machine and the kinematics of the machine and how it's going to move as this part's being machined. Or Tool Sim, we can just look at the tools and how the tools are going to behave on the part. Tool Sim's pretty cool because you can fast forward and rewind. But we're going to do OpSim right now. So let me go ahead and click OpSim. I have my stock set to transparent so we can actually see the part inside of the stock. So let's go ahead and play it. So this gives us a pretty good idea of what the order of operations are going to be, what it's going to look like. We can slow it down a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. You wish your machine ran that fast, right? Okay, so this is simulated. This looks pretty good. Maybe at this point I may want to change my step downs or my retracts or something like that. In order to do that, I can just double click on my process. I can change any of the parameters here. For instance, if I want to do a spiral lead-in, a line, things like that, and just redo the toolpath. I don't have to reselect the geometry. I don't have to start from scratch. I just pick up those toolpaths and say, you know what, let's just go ahead and modify those. Let's talk a little bit now. So that's just roughing it out. So I want to talk a little bit about finishing. So we can see there's these two, let me turn off my geometry just really quick. There's these two surfaces here that are these countersinks. These are the countersunk surfaces. So it's actually a 30-degree angle. So what I want to do is I want to take a 30-degree cutter and I want to go ahead and run around that. Basically just like a center drill or a chamfer tool and run around those parts. So I showed how easy roughing is. So let's get specific now. Let's talk about specifically just following a line. Again, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my edge selection. I'm going to pick that edge, right mouse button click, and say extract edges. You know what, while I'm here, let's just go ahead and do it for both of them. Let's turn off edge selection. See, this is a really nice thing with GibbsCAM. You don't need that wireframe on all the time to choose specific wireframe. You choose the wireframe, you extract it, you make geometry out of it, and then you hide everything else. It really makes for a clean interface. And speaking of clean interface, let's say I wanted to get rid of this toolpath. I come over here to the bottom right. I just click off of those toolpaths, and then I can either come down here to the excuse me, to the left and repaint, or as some of you might have seen in the past, GibbsCAM has this thing called a view palette. So this is, you can have this be present all the time, or you can have these same options as far as view, top view, front view, side view, isometric, and then fit. Those are all the same as down here if you don't want this up all the time. I'm going to leave that up for the rest of this demonstration. Now, again, we're going to go through that, so those same steps, creating new tools, operations, geometry, things like that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new tool. And this one I'm going to say is a countersink. There we go. If we click on here, we can zoom in. We can move this picture. You see here I'm moving the picture of the tool around. I have a flat. I don't want a flat there. I want that to be pointed. And there we go. Next, I'm going to choose my operation. Let me go ahead and delete this. I'm going to delete that roughing. Again, I'm going to right mouse button click here. I can say, I can pick a process that way, or I can just double click. So I'm going to double click. And this time I'm going to pick contour. And for the tool, I'm actually going to pick, I'm going to go down here to other tools and then pick that tool that I just made. Now, as far as the parameters go, they all look pretty good except the start and end of the tool path. I do want it to start at 0, but I want it to end, I'm going to hold Alt down at that surface. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the geometry. I'm holding down Control key and click do it. So what it's doing is doing one pass all the way down to the bottom at 20,000 steep. So let's go ahead and make that 10 thousandths. So we can do it. I'm going to go ahead and click redo. And you can see now that countersink is coming down in three levels. We can actually ramp down if we wanted to on pockets. Let's go, I'll show you what that looks like. Let's go ahead and redo it. So you can see that's ramping down with a finished pass at the bottom. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like when I simulate all of that. So we've seen this before, we know that works. So really what we're looking at are these machining parameters down here. There we go. Now what I would like to do is actually machine the back side of this. So I basically want to do the same roughing and maybe some finishing or things like that to the back side of this plate. GibbsCAM, it's really easy to do. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my coordinate system just so we can kind of see what's happening here. Let's shoot over to my isometric just because it's kind of a frame of reference so everybody can see it. Now, you can see that I'm looking at it from the top down. I know this because if the Z here in my coordinate system's a plus, if I flip this over, you can see that it's negative. So I know that now I'm looking at the bottom of that coordinate system. I'm going to come up, I'll tell you what, I'll use the palette because it's a little bit easier. I'm going to look at the top view. You can see that it's plus. I want to look at the bottom view. And the way I do that is I hold down my Alt key and hit the top view, so it'll give me the opposite view. And I know this is the bottom because I see that minus, right, that negative, so I'm looking at the negative Z. Now let me go ahead and just look at that from that view again. What I want is I want to make a new coordinate system to machine. I don't want to move that coordinate system because that's going to mess up all of my toolpaths that I have already because it's referencing that coordinate system. I'm going to make another coordinate system. I'm going to open up my coordinate systems and I'm going to right mouse button click and I'm going to say new coordinate system from view. So I have this new coordinate system and this is what I'm going to use to machine this backside. Now, I don't want to have to go through everything again. I want to reuse what I have. Let me get rid of this chamfer. I'm going to double click on that series of toolpaths that I did for their side. You can see that they pop up there. Let me open up the parameters. And now what I want is I want to change down here the machining coordinate system. I'm going to use that new one that I just created. Because it's flipped, I'm going to have to change the start point and the end point. Basically, they're just opposite. And now instead of redo, if I hit redo, it would overwrite all of these toolpaths. I'm just going to click down here and I'm going to click do it. So you can see, if I can get my space mouse going, you can see how easy that is to reuse toolpaths. All I did is I flipped it over, I created a new coordinate system, and I applied those same toolpaths to this part. We can go ahead and we can simulate everything. Let's go to OpSim here. Let me rewind it. But I just want to see what I just did so you can see what's highlighted in yellow. I'm going to select Show Just Selected Operations and hit play. So this shows me just that second side, just that second set of operations. Let's talk a second. I'm going to go to my basic, to my original isometric view. Let's repaint it so we don't see the toolpaths and clear this out. So let's talk about reusing toolpaths. This is another thing. We talked about making it, how GibbsCAM is going to make it really fast for you to program parts. Say I'm a watchmaker, I make a ton of these things. Now they're all different, the pockets are a little bit different, the gear sizes and the gear ratios are a little bit different, but realistically, the geometry is all pretty similar. There's round pockets, there's a couple sets of pockets at different levels and things like that. And I know because of the size, this is the tool I want to use. I want to use this, you know, this 16th inch end mill. And all of these parameters are right. The step down, you know, use stock, because I'm going to do the same thing over and over. What I can do is I can right mouse button click and click on Save Process List. And what this is going to do is this is going to save the processes that I have here as a preset of options. So let me go ahead. I'm just going to pick the folder that I'm working in now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to delete everything that I have done so far. Let's say we're starting from scratch now. Now, I told you we're going to speed things up, so I don't have to go through all that. You know, those 5 steps: creating tool, choose operation, all this other stuff. I'm going to come to my right, to my left down here, and I'm going to say load process list. I'm going to go ahead and pick that process that I saved and open it. So you can see when I open that process, not only does it open up that process with the right parameters, it also automatically adds the tool up here. So it's not just saving the process, it's saving everything: the tool, the process, the parameters, all that stuff. So now at this point, I can just pick, I can pick the surface and pick it, but I'll just, for better reference, I'll pick the solid, and then I'll pick that line, remember, to have it be contained. Double click on it and hit do it. And we can see how GibbsCAM applies those parameters right to this model. And I can use these parameters on any model. It could be big, it could be small. I mean, obviously I don't want to do landing gear for an F-18 with a 16th inch end mill, well, unless I get paid by the hour, and then I definitely want to do that. But, you know, point being that, you know, it doesn't have to be this model or this quote unquote type of model. It could be anything. Anytime you want to use a 16th inch end mill to rough out pockets or rough out a part, you can go ahead and just recycle or reuse this process. There's another real key aspect of GibbsCAM that really helps me speed up my programming. When I do these demonstrations, I always do my best to keep the interface looking exactly like it looks when you will open it. The first time you open GibbsCAM, this is what it's going to look like. Now, here's the great thing. It doesn't always have to look this way. Let me turn off these tools and these cams. You can actually customize these toolbars to be more in line with what you use on a daily basis. For instance, this is an MTM control here, sync control, all this other stuff. I can actually turn that off. I can exit out, or I can come to my toolbars and actually just turn off what I want and what I don't want. The other thing I can do too is I can drag and drop stuff that I don't use. Now, once I get this set to, I have the icons that I use every day up there. I've got rid of the ones that I never use. I can go ahead and say save customization profile. And again, that'll just put it somewhere, wherever you'd like it to go. So what I did is I'm going to go ahead and load one that I made before called milling. And you can see what this does is it creates just the icons. It creates an interface with just the icons that I use mostly when I'm doing milling. My tools and my cam are right smack dab in the middle. I can open those up. I use geometry palette and dimension palette and, to create surfaces and modify solids, sure, but not that often. So they're kind of off to the right a little bit. But I have this all front and center. It's right in the middle. It's exactly the way I like it. Not only is it the way I like it, but it's really trimmed down. A lot of cam systems, like I said in the intro, you end up having to sift through a bunch of stuff to find things that you use every day. We know this. I've been in the shops before, and I don't know if you've seen this, but there's machinists that have a checklist right next to them of things that they have to change and steps that they take to program a part. This will cut that list down. Instead of, go to features, go to hole manager, or go to solids and do this stuff. All of this stuff is just right up here. You can click on it. It really streamlines your day. That's going to be about it for milling. Let me show you how easy it is for turning. Now, I'm not going to walk through a turning part with you, but I just want to show you some pre-programmed turning parts and actually some mill turn parts, maybe a little bit more complex parts. And you're going to see that all of the steps and the menus look almost exactly the same. So let me go ahead and switch this back so we can just have that kind of baseline. Get rid of this. So again, this is exactly what GibbsCAM is going to look like as soon as you open, well, obviously without the part and the toolpath, but yeah, this is, as far as the interface goes, it's going to look like this. So let me go ahead and open that turning part. There are a lot of little things in GibbsCAM too that help you save a lot of time. When I go file open, you can see that I get a list of not just recently opened files, but types of files, GibbsCAM package files, part files. I actually get a list of folders too that I've been in inside of GibbsCAM to kind of speed things up. It's really hard to really organize sometimes, just the mass amount of parts that you have to do. So sometimes you work on one part a lot. We can actually pin that to the start menu so we can always open it. So let's go ahead and open up this turning part right now. I've got a couple things that I really want to show you, and I'm running a little low on time, but hey, luckily the whole theme of this webcast is being able to do things kind of quickly. I have this part, it's a turning part. So I open up my tools and I want to turn this. How do I do it? How do I get geometry out? It's really easy. So first off, remember I was able to save a process when I was doing the milling. Well, I do a lot of turning, and I've also saved some of my previous turning processes. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to right mouse button click over here, and I'm going to say load process list. I'm going to pick rough turning and open. We can see when I do that, I get a process and a tool just like that. I don't have to go and create a tool. I don't have to create a process. Now, again, with those steps, the next thing I want to do is get geometry. So I need a piece of line geometry for the tool to follow, point to point. I can use this slicer and get a profile of this part. Now, one of the problems is you can see here, that profile goes down into that groove, and really I don't want to turn down there because I'm going to gouge the part and all this other stuff. What GibbsCAM has to help you guys with this is a spun body. So I can click calculate spun body, and it'll give me the spun profile of the part. Now, as far as the toolpath goes, all I have to do is tell GibbsCAM where I want to machine. So when I click on this, I get these little markers. And I'm going to say, I'm going to start on that piece of geometry, and I want to end on that piece, but I want to give it a little bit extra that way and a little bit extra this way. That's it. So I want to flip it over though. Let me come in. I think I clicked the wrong button here. There we go. And now I just click do it. And then there's my roughing. So you can see that I was able to reuse operations. I didn't even have to really change any of these parameters, and I can just go ahead and simulate this. You'll see what it looks like. Let me close this out. So I was able to really quickly and easily get that tool path on that turned part using a saved process. Let me show you two more complex parts. I'm going to show you an MTM part, so a multitask machining or a mill turn part, and then I want to show you a multi-axis milling part. Let me go ahead and open up that MTM part that I have. Here's my mill turn part, and I've already have toolpath on this and tools assigned to this also. You can see on the right, there's a combination of turning operations, turning operations and milling operations. And I can just tell by the icons. I can double click on that icon and I can see that this is my rough turn, or I'm sorry, my face turning. And then I can come down here and this is my rough turning. And then it goes to milling and things like that. So what we're able to do with MTM parts is it's a very easy combination. This might look familiar from earlier on with all of the retracts and steps and all that other stuff from our milling. It's not a whole different menu. It's the exact same menu. Same thing with our turning menus. They look exactly the same as if you were just doing a turning operation. What we do at GibbsCAM is we just let you combine milling and turning and control some of the kinematics of the machine to get a really nice, efficient code for any mill turn machine. I'm going to show you Machine Sim here. I actually have the machine model for this. And let's go ahead and press play. So this is a machine model that we can provide you guys. It gives, as you can see, a full display or kinematics of the machine. There's actually a transfer here that's going to happen in a second. And really all this is a combination of milling and turning operations that are combined with a couple processes, what we call utility operations for, handoffs and retracting the tools and things like that. Speed it up a little bit. There's that handoff, and then there's the machining of the back end of it. Let me rewind it. We have machining models and post-processors for, I don't know, thousands of machines. If we don't have yours, we can help you build it. You can order it. Post-processors, our post department's great. We'll work with you to make sure that your machine is running the way that you need it to. Let me go ahead and last but not least, and while I actually answer some questions here, let me go ahead and open up that 5-axis part I was talking about. You can see here I've got a couple parts in a vise, and I want to machine these in a 5-axis environment on a 5-axis machine. I'm going to go to Machine Sim and let you show. This is another machine model that I have that's a very highly detailed, really great example of our capabilities for simulating your machines. Go ahead, this is, we'll run through them all, it's fine. So as this runs, I'm going to loop this around. If you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat box or the questions box, and we're going to get to them right now. So let me know if I if I missed anything or if I need to include anything. So let's go ahead and answer those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just let this run while I answer the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the window and the little chat box there, or the question box, and we're going to get to them right now. So here we go.